What is up, everybody? This is the Sharp Angles podcast. I am Raymond Summerlin. This is the Thursday preview edition for Wildcard Weekend, which I refuse to call Super Wildcard Weekend because that's absurd. It's been this way for a long time. We'll talk. You know what? I'm gonna rant about that in a second. But first, I'm gonna introduce Rich, Mr. Rich Hribar, here to talk about Wildcard Weekend. How are you doing, Rich?
Oh, good, man. We made it. Hey, 18 weeks down. This is kind of like a fun, not super weekend, I guess we could say. But no, this.
Hey,
I think last year all 6 games were rematches, and then this year we only got 3. I always like when we get new games, and obviously we have one of the funnest ones that we could have had. But it is nice to have 3 new games. We'll see if like the weather hurts this weekend or not. We have a huge weather week, but other than that, man, we made it to the playoffs. It's supposed to be fun and enjoy it here.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think it will be fun. And the weather, it seemed like it was going to be worse. Like all 3 of the outdoor games would be affected. I think that Monday game is looking a little bit better. What I will say is I've been sick all week, and so there might be some old man yells like things happening. Like when I get ill, like I immediately turn into a 67-year-old man that talks about the depression a lot. Like that is where I am. And the Super Wildcard Weekend has annoyed me for a couple reasons. First of all, it's like you didn't need to rebrand it. Who knew? Like, who's turning on wild card games that hasn't watched the NFL all season? It's not like someone has not watched the NFL all season, doesn't know that there's extra wild card games, turns on the game and goes, "Oh heavens, why are there 6 wild card games this week?" Like they know that. The other thing is this Monday game really annoys me for some reason. I don't know if I could quite put my finger on it, but I want the playoffs to be done on Sunday. I want Sunday night. I want the playoffs to be done. I want to be able to talk about it, get ready for the week. Like this Monday game, it's really been annoying me. And it's not even a good game. That's the problem. Why are you putting this game on Monday? This is a Saturday afternoon game. The Eagles and Bucks is a Saturday afternoon game if I've ever seen one. And we have to wait all the way until Monday night to watch it. Again, I have been sick, so it's possible that's where this anger is coming from. But I don't like it. I don't like the Monday game, Rich.
I'm with you. I think I would rather have just 2 3 game slates for like betting
Yep,
DFS stuff. Like give us 2 clean 3
absolutely.
game slates, and it's just a lot more optimal. But I mean, dollars, man. Listen, we didn't need to go to a 7th playoff team either because they haven't won or been, less than 7-point dogs in a game. But hey, print that money, NFL.
Yeah, I mean, how would we have ever survived without the Mason Rudolph led Steelers going to play in Buffalo in the worst weather that you've ever seen in your entire life? How would we have lived our life without all of those things happening? I don't know. I don't know if we could have bared it. That's fine. I am excited about this weekend. Don't let anything that I've just said dissuade you from the notion that I am actually really excited about this weekend. I think it's going to be a fun weekend. Before we get there, however, I do want to mention that we've launched our postseason packages. We've been on fire over the last 2 months with our betting recommendations. Rich has been on fire with his worksheet previews, with his DFS recommendations. All of that is available still in the postseason. And if you use the promo code WILDCARD, you can get 75% off our weekly postseason package for the first week. And so that's a really easy way to get your foot in the door and kind of see what we do and see if you're interested in what we have to offer. Also, for our postseason package subscribers, we are offering a pick'em challenge exclusively for our postseason subscribers. There are prizes associated with it as well. So head over to sharpfootballanalysis.com and you can find out about this pick'em challenge and how to sign up and all of those things. So make sure you go and check that out. All right, let's get right to it. Let's just get started. First game of the week. Texans hosting the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland 2.5-point road favorites. Totals at 44.5. This is an interesting game because it is one of our rematches, but it's not really a rematch because
Yeah.
CJ Stroud didn't play in the last one. So there's not a ton you can take out of that matchup, I don't think. But CJ Stroud specifically, I think, is probably the key factor in this game and who's going to win and lose. We can talk about Flacco. I think Flacco has some of that as well. But for Stroud, I mean, is Stroud going to be able to stand up to pressure in this game and to one of the best defenses in the league when we've seen him kind of not be able to do that this year? And I think that probably is, if I was picking one factor that's going to determine this game, I think that's probably the one, right?
Yeah, I think when you look at just breaking down this game, you just have to start with like the massive disadvantage they have offensive line versus the Cleveland defensive line. The Browns second in the NFL in pressure rate. From day one, this Houston offensive line has been behind the eight ball. Like they've rotated dudes in and out, been missing guys in different weeks. I mean, they just haven't had anyone stay on the field like in unison. Their most frequent offensive line combination was on the field for just 20% of their snaps this season. It's 28th in the league. So I just think the Browns are be able to get pressure and get to the quarterback. And we've seen like in the context of playoff football, like that wins games. If you can pressure or disrupt the other quarterback, especially a rookie quarterback that has struggled against pressure, against man coverage, and it largely just against better defenses, right? Like you look at Stroud's game log, it's very clear to diagnose. Like we objectively saw a lot of the eruption spots happening in advance, and we saw a lot of the spots where he didn't have ceiling weeks or struggled in advance as well. And even with though like the Texans probably will not be losing this game 36-7 at some point, it is still going to be an uphill battle, I think, for this offense in totality against this Browns defense.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up we've seen the matchups before. One of Stroud's worst games this year came against the Jets, a Jets team that plays a lot of man, not as much as the Browns, and gets pressure at a pretty good rate. Again, not as high as the Browns, but still it's a team that is at least a defense that, especially at that time in the season, was at least analogous to this Browns defense. And Stroud really struggled in that game, before ultimately leaving it. And so I think that, yeah, I think that if you look kind of at his history and where he struggled this year, it suggests to me that that's going to be a problem for them. But on the other side, too, you look at what Joe Flacco has done, and we're all, excited about Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco probably wins comeback player of the year, I would imagine, at this point is where we're going to see this. But if you look at Joe Flacco and what he's done, it's been great because he's thrown for a lot of yards. He's thrown for a lot of touchdowns. Those touchdowns probably at an unsustainable rate, but he's also turned the ball over a lot. And so if I get to the end of this game and Flacco's turned the ball over 4 times and the Texans end up winning it, they continue to be able to run. Maybe they get some long runs with Devin Singletary and they're able to score some points and kind of hold on. That also wouldn't be surprising to me. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, obviously, that the Browns are going to win this game. But I think if the Browns lose this game, the most likely path to that, to me, is Flacco just struggling with turnovers and not getting as much luck with touchdowns as maybe he has been getting through his starting run.
Yeah, that's what basically all of my friends in the Cleveland area that are Browns fans have talked about. Like, we know how this is going to end. It's been a great ride, but like the way they're turning the ball over, like there's no way this doesn't end. And whether it be this week or at some point, end on like a crippling Joe Flacco interception. I mean, even in that Jets game, he tried to keep the Jets like hanging around in that game when we last seen him on Thursday night. In that one. But yeah, I mean, this is where I think the rematch comes into play more so as an advantageous for the Texans in this game than probably the Browns, right? Because this is the first time Flacco with the Browns is facing a team for a second time. Like, what do the Texans and DeMeco Ryans do to calibrate? Like, where did they have success? Obviously, we know where they failed in the first game. Yeah. When they went to man coverage, when they put, their cornerbacks on an island with Amari Cooper, they were absolutely flooded. So what adjustments do the Texans make to kind of, calibrate slowing down Joe Flacco in this passing game? It's just been red hot. I mean, Joe Flacco's played 5 games with the Browns and already has thrown for 300 or more yards in the longest stretch in franchise history. And he's also matched a franchise record for multiple passing touchdown games in a row. So which is pretty wild to think about because this is a team that's been around since, the 50s. They did leave for a little period of time, but, hey.
I hadn't heard about that. It's an interesting story, huh?
Yeah. But that's really what it comes down to. That's where I think like the Texans in this, from a rematch perspective, I think they have more to gain from the first matchup than the Browns necessarily do, obviously, because Stroud didn't play. And Flacco's just been turning the ball over so much. So we've seen in the playoffs again, like that's the other bugaboo. Like when teams turn the ball over in the playoffs, the team that have won the matchup battle since the NFL expanded to 32 teams in the playoffs have won 77% of the time. Teams that have a multiple edge in turnover battle have gone 95-18 in those games. That's your path, right? Like that's your path for the Texans. You need turnovers in this game.
Yeah, and Flacco has been offering them up. And so that gives the Texans a path. I will say, the Texans pass defense, is it bad enough that even if they're going to make adjustments, it doesn't matter? Like, is that kind of where we are? What I will say about the Browns offense is they're not I would be very surprised if they're able to run the ball in this game. I said the same thing about Jonathan Taylor last week, and apparently the only team that the Texans can't stop on the ground is the Indianapolis Colts. So if the Indianapolis Colts could run on the Texans, no other team could do that, apparently, is where we are. And this Browns running game has been so bad without Nick Chubb for really the entire year. And we've seen, Jerome Ford have some long runs, and that has kind of helped the overall numbers look better, but on a per carry basis, it just hasn't been good for him. It hasn't been good for Kareem Hunt. Maybe they tried a little more Pierce, or no, Pierce Strong left that game injured. What are the options here for the Browns in the running game? I don't think they're really there. And I think that's why we've seen them throw so much with Joe Flacco. They're 5% over their expected pass rate with Joe Flacco, is because they have a quarterback now who they trust to throw the ball. They know the running game's not going to work. And so that's why I think we're going to see a lot of Flacco throws here, and also why we might see a lot of Flacco turnovers, and ultimately the Browns lose this game if that's kind of the way it goes.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the both of these teams have been really bad running the football. Houston's been a little bit better with Devin Singletary than they were in the front half of the year. But I mean, both of these teams the Browns are 27th in the NFL in rate of runs to go for 5 or more yards. Houston is 31st. Only the Buccaneers are in the playoffs. They have a worse rate than those two teams. So yeah, I mean, I expect the Browns to do what they've done over the back quarter of the season with Flacco and kind of put it in his hands. The other thing too, I think the other aspect in this game from like a top down perspective is the Texans played a pseudo playoff game last week. And I think D'Amico Ryans and Bobby Sloak did not pass their initial test. Like they were very fortunate to come out of that win with a win. And I think it was a large part due to self-sabotage. I mean, they punted across the 50 early in that game. They mismanaged, a lot of early down play calls when CJ Stroud was clearly in the zone. A lot of early down runs for the Texans, which has been kind of like their MO all year. Structurally, this is a great scheme. It definitely is. But I think from a play calling perspective and the way they are kind of coaching this team, I still have questions, and I have a lot more faith in Kevin Stefanski and what he's done as a head coach, if you're backing a side here.
Yeah, and I think it's just annoying because they didn't learn the lesson. Like that Panthers game should have been a wake-up call for them, because when they've struggled with Stroud, again in situations where maybe they were the better team, where they've struggled with Stroud has been when they allow the other team to stay in it. He was slicing up that Colts team. They should have just thrown the ball, continued throwing the ball to Nico Collins. They didn't have a ton of receiving options. I know that Noah Brown was out and Robert Woods was out and all of that stuff, but Nico Collins was open whenever you want to. You build a big lead against the Colts, you force them to abandon the run, and then you win that game running away. But they didn't do that. And since they didn't do that, since they allowed the Colts to stay in it, then they really relied on the Colts just making a couple dumb decisions at the end. By the way, deciding to run the clock down when you need a touchdown is a wild decision. Like just assuming that you're going to score a touchdown, assuming that the end of your drive will definitely be a touchdown, and you have a better chance because you have to go through it for it on fourth down, and I get all of that, but that's a wild decision by Shane Steichen. I don't he's out of the coach of the year running for me. I'm joking. Shane Steichen had a great year and he's a good coach, but that was a wild decision. But the Texans just, they benefited from that. Are they going to learn the lesson now? I don't know. Would I expect them to go in and just try to run the ball on this Browns defense and maybe not push the issue the way they should? I mean, I could see that happening again. And if that happens, yeah, I'm not feeling great about kind of where they are and their defense holding up against the juggernaut that is the Joe Flacco Browns passing game.
It's that time
Joe
of year,
Flacco.
man. Some of these guys in their first run, like you pucker up a little bit, man. And we've seen it from smart dudes, and we'll talk about it when we get there. Like we've seen really smart guys like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan do this in the postseason too. And yeah, I mean,
is there a famous example of Kyle Shanahan doing this? Is
there like 7? So yeah, so I mean, absolutely. So like, I think from just like that aspect too, if you are backing the Texans, who I think are definitely live, right? Like they are absolutely live.
Absolutely.
Like that aspect has to play into it too.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, let's move on to Chiefs Dolphins. Chiefs hosting the Dolphins. This is one of our first weather concern games. The Chiefs are 4.5-point favorites here. The total is 44. It's down from 47.5 where it opened. Weather played a role in that. I also think just kind of the offensive malaise of both of these teams in recent weeks certainly played a role in that as well. The weather's expected to be extremely cold, expected to be windy, the temperature close to zero. I know you don't put a ton of stock in most weather, and it doesn't seem like wind is going to be a massive factor here. But what I'll say is this feels like this is going to be the kind of cold that does affect offenses. Like when you're getting to zero in a real feel of -10, like that gets to a point where maybe we are actually seeing the passing games affected a little bit. So I'm a little bit worried about the weather. Are you worried about the weather here?
I'll wait till Saturday night, right? Like, I don't
Yeah,
think there's any point right now to like be up in our like because like we've done this so many times, right?
yeah,
So many
you're
times.
right.
So if we do get to Saturday and Saturday evening and it's that bad, like I'm obviously if like someone's showing like video of like the planet Hoth and like dudes are gonna be playing football, I'm gonna be like, yeah, that's probably not gonna be great, right? Like,
Yeah.
so yes, I'm not like so stubborn to where I won't come off of it. I just think this early, like I'm not gonna go like crazy on all these angles. I want to break down the game objectively first and then calibrate, working backwards. And some of these times we've done this, like I've been doing this for a decade, right? Like,
Yeah.
and there's times where you talk about something on a Wednesday or Tuesday about weather, and like it's just thrown out the window. So when we get there to Saturday night, we'll deal with it then. But I think in general, the Dolphins have just run as cold as you could possibly run this for these final 3 weeks of the season, and it could be a literal allegory coming into Saturday night as well. Everything has gone wrong for them these past 3 weeks. They basically held the keys to winning the division, hosting a home game potentially against Mason Rudolph, to going to Kansas City in Arrowhead. And listen, this Chiefs team has not been as as the juggernaut and fine-tuned machine that we've seen them be in years past. But this is still Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid at home, where they are 9-2 together. Both losses only coming in overtime. A Dolphins team that now lost two more defensive starters last week. They're just down so bad overall. And, we'll probably get Raheem Mostert and Jalen Waddle back in some capacity. We don't know if it's 100% on either level. Tyreek looks like every Tyreek target looks like he's hurt at this point of the season. Like it's rough. The one area where I think the Dolphins can have success is running the football. And just how long can they stick with the run? They found a great run game in Germany when these teams played, but they were down 21 points when they found it. Like, like where they were having success, they couldn't get out of the hole. So do they start the game out hot running the football is probably their best avenue of success here.
Yeah, there's a couple interesting things to that. First is that the Chiefs offense, even that Chiefs offense they faced in Germany was better than what we've seen recently. And so if you're just hoping to stay in game script, then you're in a much better situation against this version of this Chiefs team than you would be, in years past with the offenses that we've seen. The other thing, it was really interesting in that Bills game, what the Dolphins did is the Dolphins were able to run the ball with A Chain, especially pretty much at will against that Bills team, and then they stopped. They like put it in their back pocket, and I don't know if that was just like you said, even smart coaches sometimes pressure burst pipes, right? Sometimes they come up a little bit short in these pressure situations. Or is that, hey, this running game's really working. We don't want to show people what we're doing. And like I'm very confused by kind of what they did last week. And so that is an interesting aspect of this. I'm glad you mentioned kind of like the the Chiefs offense as well. Like we go into this thinking like I don't like do you look at this total of 44 and still think that that's too high? Based
Yeah,
on what we've
potentially.
seen from these two teams. Like it's because you would think it's very odd to have these two teams where if you look at the year in stats of points per drive and yards per play, it looks pretty good. But every feeling, every kind of like vibe, to use the kids' terms, you get from this game is that like both of these offense kind of aren't good. The Dolphins defense might not be good anymore because injuries, but the Chiefs defense we think is good. Like I'm really struggling to get excited about this game at all. Like I don't know how I can get excited about either offense in this game.
I think that the Chiefs are going to have offensive success in this game if weather doesn't get in the way. I mean, the Dolphins defense has just been so predicated on pressure this season, and them missing Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, and then Andrew Van Ginkel and Jerome Baker, I think is huge for this individual matchup. We haven't seen Travis Kelce. Maybe he's just not healthy or he's just, 34 and it's going to be a thing. But like they've already been crushed by tight ends the entire season. They lose their best coverage linebacker. If it is a short passing game, I still think that the Chiefs are going to have success. I think Isaiah Pacheco is going to have success in this game. So I do think the Chiefs are probably in a little better spot than you do. I mean, you've been consistently down on them all year, though, so it's not like you're wavering at all. You continuously to go with the line here. But if the weather is not a big deal, I do think the Chiefs do handle this game.
So this Dolphins defense is definitely in a bad spot. Like, nobody is going to disagree with that. It seems like Xavier Howard's not going to play. Like, they are in a really bad spot. But even this version of this Dolphins defense, are they worse than the Bengals? Right? Who the Chiefs scored 25 on, and it wasn't a convincing 25. Are they worse than the Raiders?
I disagree. They had almost 400 yards of offense in that game. Like, they moved the ball down the field at will. They just struggled in the red zone.
You are correct. That's the game. That's the game that they struggled in the red zone. I was wrong about that. I agree.
Yeah.
But that Raiders, are they better than like the Raiders defense that they struggled
against? That's the thing with the Chiefs. Every time we start to come around, they do this, right? Like, they are like, then they just like completely flatline like the Raiders game.
Yeah, I just don't again, it's a lot of vibes things, but like Rashee Rice is there and he's getting open. You go, okay, well, we finally have our wide receiver that's going to make this work, and then it's still not working. And Travis Kelce, you go, well, he's lost a step, but he's still going to get some catches, and it's still not working. And the running game, we have Isaiah Pacheco, who makes big plays and has been solid when healthy, but even when he's in there, it's still kind of not working. And so I wonder if like the matchup just doesn't matter and this thing is just not working. Then again, Mahomes could come out and he could throw, 4 touchdown passes, which would be a third of the touchdown passes he's thrown since week 8, and everything would be fine. But I just think that this is going to be lower scoring than maybe we would expect, if especially beginning of the season. If you told me in week 1 these two teams were playing in the playoffs, I'd expect the total to be 52, and I expect we're going to see a lot of points. I don't think that's actually what we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lower scoring game. I don't think we're going to see the
them play at a neutral site. We seen them play at a neutral site indoors. They scored 35 points.
Exactly. That's kind of where I think we are, and so I'm really struggling to get excited for it. What I will say is I do think that Pacheco is in a really good spot here. And with how much usage he's getting now with Jerick McKinnon out, and he doesn't really have that kind of like person behind him that's going to push him. Pacheco's in a really good spot here in this game with all the injuries and all that. He's the one guy I'm looking at and I'm going, yeah, I'm really excited to play Isaiah Pacheco in DFS. The problem is I assume everyone else is as well. And so I don't really know what I'm gaining from that.
Yeah, I think the way the NFL split this up, this is where it's bad, right? Because like the Saturday slate is very similar to the one last week. It's just gross. Like if you're playing that 2-game slate, I don't think it's a great slate to play. I think it's a pretty bad slate to play. But it's where it is. He's by default. He's a home favorite running back. There's weather stuff. There's no Jerick McKinnon. The early game doesn't necessarily have like pieces you want to play. It's going to force ownership to him by default.
Yeah, I wonder if is there an avenue for you not to play Isaiah Pacheco in this game? Is like that?
Yeah. The larger your field size increases, I think you just have to swallow it. If he projects to be 60% owned, you just have to go against and hope that like he doesn't score a touchdown, potentially, just doesn't run as optimally, and you kind of have to play. You don't even necessarily have to play the leverage. You just have to not play him, and just have that be your path to success. To be fair to the Dolphins, like their injuries are not to the interior of their defense where they've been good, right? Like they have 2 awesome defensive tackles. So like that maybe is like an avenue where they can just like at least like prevent Pacheco to like not having like a bunch of path to efficiency. He's going to get a lot of touches regardless though. So yeah, but that's really it. He's going to be pushed to a ton of ownership. I think Achane is probably the most interesting DFS piece here because we know Mostert's going to play and probably still get high leverage touches. But if the Dolphins do have success running the football, we know he's got big play ability. Like we know he's going to probably play passing downs in this game. So like Achane becomes, I think, the most interesting kind of play in this game.
Yeah, it's multiple avenues, like multiple outs there, right? Because he could just have a big play in the running game. He could just have 60 yards in the running game. Or he could be what we've seen more in the second half of the season when Mostert was healthy, where he could get 4 and 5 catches and he could, kind of supplement his maybe lack of carries that way. And so we definitely have outs. I'm trying to think about what that Saturday lineup looks like without Pacheco. I guess you're playing A Chain. I think that's you have to have that upside if you're not going to play Pacheco. And then I guess maybe you take a swing on Singletary and build around the idea that Flacco turns the ball over and the Texans get short fields and they're able to run the ball. Maybe you get some long plays against that Browns defense, which they've been susceptible to giving up. I guess that'd probably be the construction that I would go with. Maybe Texans defense, Singletary, A Chain, and then just try to play, receivers the rest of the way. Is that kind of where you would go with it?
Yeah, probably. I mean, you just punt with Jerome Ford, hope he catches some receiving stuff. Like you just need in that scenario, you just really need Pacheco to fail at that ownership. Like, really, it's not necessarily who you play. I mean, obviously, it will eventually matter. Like, who you have to get points from someone, but the big building block is just having him fail at that ownership. And I haven't seen projected ownership to what it is, but if he is on the 2 game slate, going to be 60% owned. Like, I remember there was a slate a couple years ago, and the youths probably don't remember this. But it was a 2 game slate, and Le'Veon Bell was like projecting to be like 70% owned. They're playing the Houston Texans. DeAndre Hopkins made like a ridiculous one-handed like tip catch in this game. If you remember, that's the game. But Le'Veon Bell was like just tracking. It was a similar spot where like he was clearly like bar none, like the running back to play. And at that ownership, you just had to swallow not playing him. Like, you're going to get shadow realmed, right? Like, I think you talked about this on the Thanksgiving slate, maybe with Christian McCaffrey, or there was a Christian McCaffrey. And like,
McCaffrey.
You just need him to fail, though. And like, granted, if he does fail, you lose. You're not winning any money, but that's your path to winning actual money, though.
And I think that's a really important talking point if we're trying to, because we are going to focus more on DFS now that the real fantasy season is over. You have to be willing to fail if you're really trying to chase tournaments, because you're not going to, the chances that you get it 100% perfect, when everybody else doesn't know the plays,
slate,
is
it's like a showdown. It's like a showdown slate, like an extension of a showdown slate. Like 2 games versus 3 games is massive.
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I played the showdown slate on Sunday night. I played a lot of Gabe Davis and captain. It ended up really failing, right? Because he left the game injured with 0 catches. But I'm not like upset about that, because Gabe Davis, I know what the ceiling of Gabe Davis was. And if Gabe Davis goes and has a wild game, that's going to put me in a great position, right? And so you just have to be willing to say, all right, I'm going to accept there's a floor outcome here that I'm going to finish dead last in this tournament. I think I might have finished dead last in the tournament actually on Showdown. But you have to accept that and just say, all right, well, I'm going to take a shot at some things that maybe the public doesn't expect to happen. Does that mean you don't play any Pacheco? Obviously not. But you just got to take some chances.
Yeah, right, I'm going to try not to talk about it's more the larger it goes, right? Larger your field size goes is where you would start to talk into angles of like, all right, how does Pacheco fail? How do I get off of the most popular play of the slate?
And I do think that part of it is important as well. How does Pacheco fail, right? Like, that's an important thing as well. If you're trying to find leverage, it's not just that, I think Pacheco is going to fail. Or, I mean, maybe not. He could have 17 carries for 83 yards and not be worth it. That's in the realm of possibility. It's not a bad game for Pacheco, but he doesn't get in the end zone because Travis Kelce gets 2 touchdowns and Rashee Rice gets a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes throws for 3. That's not a bad game for Pacheco, but he probably still isn't worth it at that point. So that's kind of the game you have to play. We're going to move on to Bills Steelers here. I'm going to try not to talk about the weather because I know you don't want to talk about the weather here on a Thursday morning. What I will say is Warren Sharp wrote an article over at sharpfootballanalysis.com talking about the possibilities of wind in this game and how wind has affected game totals in Buffalo. There's obviously the great example of the wind tunnel game. Mac Jones attempted 3 passes in that game a couple years ago. So there's a lot of great stuff in that article. I'd recommend you go and read it. As a result of the expected weather in this game, the total here is 36, down from 43, maybe 35 and a half a few places. Buffalo is 10-point favorites, which gives the Steelers one of the lowest projected implied game totals that I've ever seen in the NFL. Like, this is a wild projected game total.
Yeah, it is. And the Steelers, like, this is what they want, right? Like, this is their path. If you're saying like they're going to be the first 7 seed to win, like, there's you need this game to have like high wins to where like the loss of TJ Watt is mitigated. The Bills can't do some things down the field that maybe you've been vulnerable to this season. They have to rely more on this run game that's been very, cattywampus. Like we thought like Joe Brady had unlocked James Cook, and turns out he potentially didn't unlock James Cook. So like this is what you want. You want to be able to hand the ball off to Najee Harris as many times as possible, right? You want to have Mason Rudolph just potentially have to make 1 to 2 plays instead of 7 to 9 plays. That's if you're the Steelers, like that's the game script you want to have. Like you need that, because if this game is in optimal conditions, the Bills are able to drop back and pass when you don't have TJ Watt and your defense has completely been predicated on getting pressure on the quarterback this season, then you're in trouble. And you have to drop back and have Mason Rudolph make plays against the team that is number 1 in the NFL in sack differential, number 1 in sack differential at home. This Bills defense has been largely good no matter what they've done. Duct tape and bubble gum, like this defense has been effective throughout the course of the season. So that's the avenue that Steelers want to wake up. They want this Sunday game to be 30-mile-per-hour winds, maybe some snow. They want it. Give it to them.
Yeah, I mean that is really, I think, their only path here, is that's what we end up with. Najee Harris, I mean, assuming he's healthy, he missed practice on Wednesday. So we're recording this on Thursday morning. Assuming Najee Harris is healthy, that's the game script they want. They do not want to get into a situation where Josh Allen is dropping back to pass. Like you said, their pass defense, when they don't get pressure, is abysmal, and the person that gets pressure is TJ Watt, and he's not going to play. And so that is not a great combination for your defense. And so yeah, there's a lot of things pointing to the Bills here if the weather conditions allow them to do that. The other thing about Mason Rudolph is, this has been Mason Rudolph helped, turn things around, and it didn't look like they were going to be in the playoffs, and now they're in the playoffs thanks to some help from, the Jaguars. But if you look at what Mason Rudolph has done, 31% of his yardage and all of his touchdowns have come on 3 long plays. He played 2 bad defenses in a team that did not care about the game. This all still feels like a mirage to me. And if he is forced, even in good weather conditions, if he is forced to drop back and throw against this defense, it's not going to go well. I have no faith it's going to go well. I'm trying to make a case for, okay, how do I take the other side of this game? How can I be, contrarian and take the other side of this game? And I'm struggling to find a way to get there. Like I'm really struggling.
Yeah, you need the weather and you need the turnovers, right? Like the Bills, turning the ball over to just kind of create that game script where, like I said, if Rudolph has to make more than 1 to 2 plays in this game, it probably went bad for the Steelers.
It's bad.
Like if you could squeeze and say like, hey, I only need him to make 1 or 2, then you got hope. But if you're relying on him to make several plays, this is not it. We're waiting for that shoe to drop. It's the Steelers in general, right? Like this team hasn't been good all year. Like this is a team that's been very kind of mediocre. Rudolph's definitely been the best of the 3 guys that have played quarterback for them. But again, like
what a damning indictment of the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh. He's very clearly been the best option.
I think the biggest problem the Steelers have is, what do you do now in the offseason? Like they probably go back to Kenny Pickett, right? Like you're going to give Kenny Pickett a 3rd year, and dude, you don't have an answer still at quarterback.
Yeah, there are no options here. Like that's why the smoke about Mike Tomlin leaving, the reason why I kind of believe he might resign and maybe try to go somewhere else or take a year off, is because this quarterback situation is rough. And I don't see a clean path out of it aside from taking a swing. Maybe you just give a lot of money to Kirk Cousins, right? Or maybe you try to trade for Russell Wilson. I don't know what you're going to try to do, but there aren't any really clean avenues here for them to get out of this quarterback situation. And can you go back to Kenny Pickett? He didn't want to be a backup. He was inactive, right? 2 weeks ago. We've kind of swept that under the rug. He was healthy when he was inactive. It seems like he kind of got up and said, no, I'm not going to be active and, not play. And so is that relationship dead? Even could you go back to Kenny Pickett? Or are we going to talk ourselves into Mason Rudolph being the answer for next year? Yeah, it's a really rough situation for the Steelers. But hey, they're still in the playoffs. So what are you going to say? Good job by you. In the best division in football, they still made it into the playoffs. So there you go. There's a comment here from Adam in the chat. Warren averaging over targets a game with Rudolph. I actually think that that's a really
Yep, yep.
good call because I think game script, I mean, if they are down in this game, if this game script goes the way the line suggests that it's going to go, you're going to see a lot more Warren than we are going to see Najee Harris. And we're going to see a lot of catches for Jaylen Warren as well, I would suspect. So if you're playing DFS in this, that's definitely something to think about. If you're looking for a run back on the Steelers, more than like Pickens and hoping for a long play, or Deontay Johnson and hoping for a touchdown to raise his floor. Although I guess now big play Deontay Johnson. Are we now calling him that, big play Deontay Johnson, after last week? I do think Warren is a kind of an interesting one
Regression
there
comes through
for the
everybody.
other side.
You can't defeat it.
Big play Deontay Johnson. Big play Deontay. All right. So
I like
Cowboys
that.
versus Packers. That's our other 2-7. Get to watch that on Sunday afternoon. I hadn't really thought about that they put both the 2-7s on the Sunday kind of normal game times, which I guess makes sense. But yeah, it might be a bit of a rough go here. Cowboys at home, obviously, 50.5 point total, up from 48. So that's been rising. Cowboys -7.5 when we're recording this. You had a lot of great stats in your worksheet preview for this, which you can find at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Part of our postseason package. Use code Wildcard, 75% off your first week for our postseason package. You had a lot of great stats in there about the Cowboys at home. Obviously, I knew they had been very good at home. I don't think I knew how much better they had been than opponents at home. It's really been an impressive run for them.
Yeah, I mean, they're the only undefeated team at home. They won all 8 of their games. They've won 6 of those games by 20 or more points. Led the NFL in points per drive. They scored on almost 60% of their possessions at home, 58.8%. Obviously,
It's
league
wild. Yeah.
yeah, to score like on basically 2/3, like every 2 times we get the ball, 2 every 3 we're scoring. Led the league in turnover differential at home by more than 10. Also, I think when you just look at like this game too, like the start of this game is going to be so massive. I mean, the Packers are 1-6 when trailing at the half this season. They have been better first half team the back half of the year, which has been good, but I mean, this is a tough spot. We've talked about like the number 7 seed history, right? Like they just haven't been good. We haven't really needed this outside of just printing more money for the NFL. And that's why these teams have largely struggled in these games. I think that this is a game where if you feel Packers, you feel great because you were able to calibrate the season as it went on. It looked really bad. They were 3-6. You didn't know what you had in Jordan Love. You got some confidence in Jordan Love, and you got more reinforcement that you're with the right coaching staff, and you have a really young team that made the playoffs in a season probably where it looked like you weren't. You should feel good about all those things. I do think this is probably the largest mismatch on the entire slate of games of the 6 games. I think when you look at the Packers, they haven't faced any good quarterbacks this year in the context of the 2023 season. I know they faced Patrick Mahomes. We just talked about the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes not being what they were of years past. From a fantasy perspective, they faced one QB1 in points per game the entire season. It was Kirk Cousins, and he was absolutely carving them before he tore his ACL in that game. The next best quarterback they faced was Justin Herbert, who had 26 fantasy points in that game. They're facing this just behemoth at home this season, and Dak Prescott, who's having arguably one of the best seasons of his career. If you don't get pressure on Dak Prescott, you're effed. And that Packers have been effed when they don't pressure the other quarterback. And also, Dak Prescott's the best quarterback under pressure in the NFL this season. Yeah. Leads the NFL in completion rate and second in yards per pass attempt. So I have a hard time seeing how Joe Barry and this Packers defense slows this offensive down, especially CeeDee Lamb, who, when you look at what this terror CeeDee Lamb's on, he leads since week 6, leads the NFL in every single category per game. And when these teams played last year, I mean, CeeDee Lamb, he had no answer. He had 11 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I just think that the Cowboys are just going to score too many points in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm glad you brought this up. The Packers defense, the thing they've got, the thing that they can do is they can pressure the quarterback. And that's what they can do, and they do it pretty well in the context of the rest of the NFL. But it doesn't matter against Dak Prescott because he's really good against pressure, at least has been really good against pressure this year. This is actually very similar to there was another game that has escaped my mind that was the same thing with Dak. The trump card that team had was good pressure. It doesn't really matter against Dak Prescott. He had a pretty good game. And so I think that that's where we are. This defense has looked better the last 2 weeks, but I mean, It was against that Vikings combo of quarterbacks, and it
Yeah.
was against, Justin Fields, who, whatever you think of Justin Fields, isn't like a dynamic passer yet.
And
And so
Joe
yeah, I'm
Barry
not I'm
has
not
owned, like, that's just another notch on Joe Barry's belt versus Justin Fields.
yeah. So I'm not putting much pressure much, uh weight on that. I think that it's going to be a really good game for the Cowboys offense. And so that raises the question about, so what are we going to see from the Packers offense? And I actually think that is one of the more interesting aspects here is, are we going to see Jordan Love continue to, be the quarterback that we've seen over the last 2 months of the season outside of this one game against the Giants? And the problem when you think about that is that when you look at that Giants team and what they're able to do and what they did under now former defensive coordinator Wink Martindale, which that's been a fun story this entire week. When
I
you
miss
look
him.
at when you look at that, that seems to set up pretty closely with what we would expect the Cowboys to do in this game, and that could be problematic here for Jordan Love.
Yeah, I mean, you can feel really good though about like the growth Jordan Love's made, and Matt LaFleur, like I said, calibrating this offense to him to where like he's not just taking these inefficient deep shots, and the offense was predicated on that. They've really gotten the ball out of his hands quick. The back half of the season, really short passing game that's really helped develop Jordan Love. But I mean, still, even over his hot stretch, he struggled against these really aggressive defenses, against pressure. He's been absolutely horrible against the blitz. He's been horrible against man coverage. He's been horrible. He's going to get all those things on Sunday. And you brought up the Giants game. Like, the Giants were the last team that he faced that ran a higher rate of man coverage than the Cowboys run, and that was objectively his worst game of the back half of the season. So he's going to get all of those things. There could be, from a fantasy perspective, I think there's still a path to where you can get like some junk points, I think, from Jordan Love. But I do think this is a game where like it's going to show some of the shortcomings that he still has to overcome as he continues to grow still too. I think, like you said, if you're a Packers fan, you overall come out of this feeling very positive. I think your odds of pulling the outright upset are very thin.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, from a DFS perspective, I think Jaden Reed, probably has a good game. And again, we're assuming health. Probably has a good game here, and that would be the receiver I target, because assuming Christian Watson plays, which it seems like that's where we're going, is that Watson, was ramping up to be ready for this game if they made it. He's probably not going to play a lot based on what we've seen
Yeah.
from Watson coming back from injuries in the past, but he's also going to eat into the playing time of Dontavian Wicks and Bo Melton and those guys. Romeo Doubs, we don't know how healthy he is. So if you're targeting a pass catcher, I definitely think it's Jaden Reed, and he just fits well with what the Cowboys do. If you're trying to attack this Cowboys defense, I think that Jaden Reed is the most likely kind of outlet that we'll see here for the Packers. And then maybe try to get Aaron Jones, going. Aaron Jones last week against the Bears defense that we expected to be really tough against the run. They were tough against the run. He was able to get going against him. We're seeing the old Aaron Jones back, the Aaron Jones that I know you fell in love with at UTEP. That Aaron Jones is healthy and he's showing back up. And so maybe they can find success that way. But yeah, I don't give them much chance of getting the upset here. We're just kind of looking for some fantasy options on a short slate, I think.
Yeah, yeah. One of the few NFL players that actually follows me still, that I haven't said anything bad about, but I had positive draft takes on Aaron Jones, and he's followed me since then.
Yeah, no, he still follows me too for the same reason. Like
Great
I just
dude.
kept tweeting. I kept tweeting like in the lead up to that draft. I go, why aren't we talking about Aaron Jones? This guy's really, really good. Yeah, and he followed me. So I guess I've kept my Aaron Jones love alive. And I'd like
And
to say,
maybe he doesn't just check the social media, because I've had negative Aaron Jones tweets and never gotten back. So Michael Thomas followed me for a little bit, and then because the 1 year he was like on that tear, I dropped like this is how great Michael Thomas has been, and then like I fired one bad Michael Thomas tweet, like it was over.
yeah,
It was over, man. Their relationship was
yeah,
severed.
yeah. I never got the Michael Thomas follow. I was really high on him too. So I'm now jealous. I never got the Michael Thomas follow. Aaron Jones and Michael Thomas led me to some dynasty championships for sure. I was high on both those guys. So I appreciate all of your service to my dynasty teams. Thank you very much, Aaron Jones and Michael Thomas. The most interesting game, my favorite game definitely of the weekend, is Lions hosting the Rams on Sunday night. Detroit 3-point favorites, 51.5 point total, the highest of the week. Last week we talked about that the Lions are going to play all of their guys in week 18, and that's probably a mistake. And we're going to end up with an injury to a really important player. Unfortunately, that did happen with Sam Laporta. Dan Campbell keeps leaving open the possibility that Sam Laporta is going to play in this game. That would be highly unlikely. And even if he does play in this game, I assume he will be very limited. And so I think when we're thinking about the Lions passing game, especially, we have to think about what will this passing game look like without Laporta. And I think there are two interesting things you brought up in your worksheet. The first is with running backs and what we've seen with running back targets for this team under Ben Johnson, whenever they haven't had that kind of focal point tight end in the passing game.
Well, I mean, we know that James Mitchell and Brock Wright are not going to get the target share that Sam Laporta was occupying, and it's a bummer for this matchup because where we have wanted to target like this would have been a great spot for Sam Laporta to go pretty bonkers, given where the
It'd have
Rams
been perfect.
struggled. But we've seen this kind of story last year. I mean, last year before they traded TJ Hawkinson, they had targeted their running backs 17.5% of the time. It was middle of the league. So far this season, they've targeted the running back 17.8% of the time. Exactly the same thing. When they got rid of TJ Hawkinson, that's when they started to kind of incorporate the running backs like DeAndre Swift into the pass game. They went up to second in the NFL in target rate for their running backs. It'll be interesting to see if he calibrates the offense in a way to get Jahmyr Gibbs used more as a pass catcher. The Rams have been really good against receiving running backs, and they face some good ones too to kind of like reinforce like their efficiency against that. So it's just one of those avenues.
There was an Alvin Kamara under that I know hurt both you and my soul, receiving under against the Rams. It was like the one time we were like, oh yeah, Saints are going to lose. We're in on Alvin Kamara, and then they just shut him down. He had like, what was it, like 9 catches for like 20 yards or something absurd like that.
Yeah, I think he had like 6 or 16, something like that. But yeah, so I mean, if they are going to incorporate the running backs in the passing game, is it even going to be effective in this particular matchup? I think is an avenue. Obviously, the one thing that you look at is like the way we've always known like Jared Goff, like he struggles with disruption, and this Rams defense creates none. So like if that's the thing, like that, even without Sam Laporta, like if they're not able to disrupt Jared Goff, I mean, Sean McVay knows firsthand, like this is the path, and like this Rams defense has struggled since their bye. So like the other area too, like, because I know the public and I know you are very much on the Rams. This is a game I'm not going to take on either side. I'm just going to probably take the over or first half over and just try to enjoy it. But I think the Lions are going to have a lot of success with their running backs in this game in total, even if it's not through the passing game. I think they're going to be able to run on the Rams. And if they're able to just kind of build off of a play action game because the Rams can't disrupt Jared Goff, I still think there's a path to like a lot of offensive efficiency for the Lions in this game. I mean, the Lions have literally run on just about everyone this entire season. Now they're getting a very middle of the pack run defense. So I think that's one avenue to where the Lions can definitely make up ground for Laporta. Big picture, it might catch up to them. I definitely think that's an avenue here. I definitely don't think they're going to stop the passing game of the Rams either. That's why I said, like, maybe you just take the over and you just try to enjoy this one. The other aspect, too, is we kind of hit it on, like, if you're backing the Rams, you have to back Sean McVay versus Dan Campbell. And Dan Campbell is going to protect your money. He's at least going to put you in the most optimal spot to win your money back. Sean McVay is not. Sean McVay is going to punt from the Lions 42 or try to draw the Lions off sides and waste the timeout in a certain spot. Dan Campbell's going for twos when he should. He's going for fourth downs when he should. He's trying to win the game. And I always like backing coaches like that. Like, I always feel better when my money's involved with a coach like that. But this game is just, it has something for everyone. I kind of wrote about it. Like if you just like to watch football, you've got kind of like Matthew Stafford going back to Detroit. Gophers, the team that jettisoned him for arguably the right reason. They won a Super Bowl. You've got Ben Johnson, who worked under Sean McVay. You've got the Lions, have the longest playoff win drought in all the major sports if you just want to root for something. And then you've got, from a fantasy perspective, this game with the highest total indoors, two teams that probably aren't going to stop each other. It's kind of something for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you could even run down Narrative Street with so many players in this game. Like the other player I was going to bring up without Laporta is Josh Reynolds, who is part of our Narrative Street, group, played for the Rams. Now he's playing for the Lions. He gets a lot of targets without Laporta on the field. You wrote about it in the worksheet. I'd recommend go and read about it. And so, yeah, you can run down this Narrative Street. I do think your point about the coaching is good. I think that it's right. On the other side of that, if I'm trying to find, okay, which of these Narrative Streets actually bears some some validity and something I should think about. Goff is the kind of quarterback where everything needs to be right for him to be successful. Like that's what he needs. He needs to be at home and not get pressure. The guy who knows a lot of things that bother Jared Goff is Sean McVay. And so I think that part of the narrative street might be, talking to the defense, explaining, all right, this is the things he struggles. These are the things he doesn't like to see. I think that could be part of it. I think the Lions are going to be fine. I think they're going to score on offense. I don't think the Rams are going to blow them out. I just like the Rams here because I think the Lions just aren't able to stop this offense. And this Rams offense, when everybody is healthy, is one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the league, at least by the numbers. They're all healthy right now. They all had a week off, except for Puka, who set his records. And I just think that offense is versus the Lions defense is a bigger mismatch than the Lions offense versus this Rams defense. And that's why I like the Rams side of it. But obviously the Lions are, they're favored for a reason. They could certainly win this game. I would not be surprised by that. If they do, I think what we probably see is Stafford struggle with pressure. The Lions, that's one thing their defense can do, is get pressure. Stafford has not been great against pressure this year. And so if they're able to do that, get consistent pressure, bottle up Kyren Williams enough on first down and force them into some long passing situations, get pressure and kind of rattle Stafford, they could slow this offense down. I think that's the path for the Lions, slowing this offense down. Otherwise, I think we're seeing a shootout, and I just like the Rams offense in their matchup better than I do the Lions. And that's kind of where I am in this game.
Yeah, this is a game. I think it is going to be a game where there's going to be a lot of passing efficiency. It's going to be a high YPA game for both sides, and then hopefully that leads to us getting a lot of points and just having a really fun Sunday night. I think, like I said, I'm looking forward to this game the most. I think like many, because it does, it's just got a little bit of a little column A, B, and C for everybody, no matter what kind of type of football fan you are, or the reasons you're watching this game. It's just there. It's just kind of got all of it.
Yeah, it's great. I'm so happy for this game. Do we have to download anything to watch this game? Do we need any special apps? We don't think so. What is this game?
That's
this game. No, right? It is on NBC. Congratulations. We don't have to download Peacock.
It's the Collinsworth game.
It's the Collinsworth game. I can't wait for him to talk about how Jared Goff is a guy. Now this is a guy. Jared Goff's a guy.
It's a guy.
He's a guy.
I think you nailed it though. I mean, I think that this game comes down to what team can actually just disrupt the other quarterback enough.
Yeah, that's it. And to be fair, one of those teams does have Aaron Donald, so maybe that'll be important. Our last game of the week here, for some reason on Monday, just making my blood boil, and not even a good game, not even a game I'm interested in, is the Bucs Eagles. No. Eagles on the road here. 3-point favorites on the road, 43.5 point total. Again, why is this game on a Monday? What I do think is interesting about this game from like the Bucs offense versus the Eagles defense is if we're talking about the Bucs offense from even 3 weeks ago, we're getting really excited about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Rachaad White and even Baker Mayfield if we're playing showdown. The problem is the offense we've seen over the last 2 weeks with Baker Mayfield very clearly injured. And so I want to throw that out there. Baker Mayfield is very clearly injured. They didn't have an official practice on Wednesday, but he did not practice in what the kind of time that media was able to watch it. So he's very clearly injured, got a rib injury, got an ankle injury. I wonder if that's just going to be too high a bar for them to jump to beat even this Eagles offense that hasn't been as good over the last few weeks against this Eagles defense that hasn't been good at all throughout the entire season. If Baker Mayfield just can't do it, if he's just not healthy enough, if he's the Baker Mayfield we saw against the Panthers, then maybe the Eagles just get lucky here. They're able to get through the next round and able to kind of stop the bleeding, because that's kind of the way I see this going. If Baker Mayfield isn't, healthy enough to be what we saw maybe through that late part of the season.
I mean, this game I've got really nothing. We these teams, we don't know any who's practicing and who's not. We know who's going to be on the field for the Bucs, but we don't know anything about AJ Brown yet. We don't know. We don't have any information.
We're assuming. We're recording this on Thursday morning, by the way. If you don't listen to us live, you can go to YouTube. You can listen to us live. We're recording this on Thursday morning. The only news we have on AJ Brown is he got an MRI yesterday, and they seem to be happy about it.
Yes.
What does that mean, though?
No,
I don't know.
No one knows. Provocative, but that's it, man. We don't know anything. Yeah, we know that Jalen Hurts is going to play with his finger injury. We don't know anything about
Yeah.
Devontae Smith, right? Like Devontae Smith is
Yep.
probably going to play, like maybe play, but like do either of these Eagles wide receivers practice at all before Monday?
No
We
idea.
don't know. Probably not. Like if we're betting on it, they probably limited at best. So like we have that. So we're flying blind in that capacity. Like this Eagles team has already not played good, like the final 6 weeks of the season. So are they going to be able to take advantage of a Bucks team that we've kind of picked on? Like this is just like the same thing, like right? Like these offenses stop each other, right? It's not about like, oh, well, how do the Eagles stop the Bucks and how do the Bucks stop the Eagles? Like they've been stopping each other. I mean, the Buccaneers have beaten one playoff team this year as the Packers. These teams played earlier in the year as the fewest yards the Bucks had in a game all season. They're one of the worst teams in avoiding third downs, even though they're one of the worst running early down teams. They have the Bobby Slowick factor here. Dave Canales loves
Keep running on
ineffective
first down,
runs.
Dave. Keep running on first down, Dave. It's going to work out, I promise. Keep trying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of these things. Like it's a really gross game. It's hard to kind of handicap. I mean, objectively, you would say like this isn't how the Eagles story ends the season, right? Like they're able to rally versus this Buccaneers team, right? But like they just are so injured and banged up, and they haven't played good football. Like if they were upset, like how much would you really blink? Eventually, though, like the problem I have with this game in totality is that I don't want either of these teams to move on.
I actually have that in my notes. In my notes is, can both the Rams and Lions go through and we just get rid of both of these teams? Because I would be very okay with that outcome. Whatever happens in the Rams Lions game, let's just let both of those teams go through, play next week, and we'll just get rid of both the Bucks and Eagles. I'm fine with it. I'm very okay with it.
And the Bucks the Eagles went to the Super Bowl last year, and they still have a lot of core elements of that Super Bowl team. And you would say like, all right, we're not going to fit. But like this iteration of the Eagles, it's hard to support them going into Dallas at any point or going into San Francisco at any point and believing they're going to win those games.
Yeah, I have no faith.
And obviously, we're not picking the Buccaneers to beat either of those teams.
What I will tell you, if Baker Mayfield was healthy, like if it was the Baker Mayfield of 3 weeks ago, I'd pick the Bucks in this game. Like I would, because the
this
Eagles
is another one you
bad.
talked about, like Dolphins Eagles though, or Dolphins Chiefs. Like this total feels too high.
Yeah,
regardless.
it's high. Yeah, it's definitely too high with all the injuries the Eagles have, with the, like you say, the continual stopping of themselves of both of these offenses. Yeah, it feels too high. But then again, both of these defenses are bad. I will say the Bucs defense has been better as of late. I guess I say better. I guess the Saints ran over them 2 weeks ago, but I don't think the Bucs defense has been what it was for those 5 weeks after their bye when we were just attacking. They've gotten a little healthier. I don't think they're quite that bad. But yeah, I think the total's high, but just a Monday night game that is anybody healthy? Is anybody going to score? Is it just going to be a repeat of that other game that they've already played? That game was boring as well. That game was a night. That was one. Was that one of the 2 Monday night game ones? I think
that was a Thursday game, right?
I have vivid memories of that game being on split screen and me never ever sending the sound over to Bucks Eagles. I just have memories of that. Yeah, I really struggled.
It was it was a Monday night game. It was a Monday night game. We're running it back.
Was it the 2? Was it the 2 Monday night games that week? Yeah, I have this memory. It was because I had it split screen. I don't remember what the other game was, but I never moved until the other game was over. I did not move the little sound box on YouTube TV over to Eagles Bucks. It was just boring. Like the whole thing was boring, and I think that's kind of where we are. But I do want to say this about the Eagles, and I have to go out and say this. This team, and you mentioned it. This team was in the Super Bowl last year, and so many pieces of that team exist. Maybe the 2 best coaches on the staff aren't there anymore, and maybe that's the problem we have, and maybe that's a conversation we'll have in the off season about that. But so many pieces of this team still exist that if Jalen Hurts gets hot as a passer and AJ Brown is healthy enough and Devontae Smith is healthy enough and they actually start trying to score points and moving quickly in the first half and getting teams into a negative situation so it allows their pass rush to do what it needs to do and makes their defense look better, would I be shocked if they come out and blow the Bucks out and really look good in this game? No, because that's obviously within this team. We just haven't seen it for so long that it's hard to make a case that that's what we're going to get out of this Eagles squad.
Yeah, it was your argument with the Chiefs, of being able to turn it on. Like, what evidence? Like, we just can't. Like, we're 19 weeks into the season. Like, we can't just say it's going to happen.
Yeah, there's no evidence that's what we're gonna get. I don't like that we ended on this downer. Do you want to talk more about the Rams and Lions?
Yeah,
Do you want
listen,
to?
Rams. As someone who like got like bullied into all these plans on Saturday, and like is just hoping these Saturday games like don't run out because I'm gonna be like on the run. I'm really hoping Sunday's incredible.
Yeah, we're looking for it. I'm glad. Oh, so you missing Saturday? You're getting the 2-2-7 matchups, and so all of your hopes of a good weekend rely on this Sunday night game between the
Yeah.
Rams and the Lions.
Yeah, they rely on me playing that 3-game slate because I don't think I'm gonna play much of the 2-game slate. I'll probably fire some like real large field stuff just to
Yeah.
have a lottery ticket that I expect not to recoup any funds on. But I'll probably fire a lot of unique lineups on the Sunday slate.
Yeah, I do think you get fun with it, especially because there are those like blowout potentials that I don't know. You're probably going to
I
get
love
lower
the
roster,
idea of a
especially.
Josh Allen one-off, like not even stacking him because even in the snow, like you might get rushing stuff and like then you just like
Yeah, he
play
could just
Josh
rush for three
Allen.
touchdowns. Exactly. That
And then
could
you kind of
definitely
build
happen.
him around the good receivers. I think if you play on FanDuel versus DraftKings, Rico Dowdle becomes interesting because he's only 5K on FanDuel, whereas 4,600 on DraftKings, he doesn't get you a lot, but he gets you access to another third receiver on FanDuel where he doesn't on DraftKings. And like that's interesting because you just need like no running backs to blow you out of the water on Sunday, which is definitely in the realm of possibilities when you look at all the matchups. So like he becomes interesting as like a punt play where you can just get access because there's some awesome wide receivers on the Sunday slate.
You keep trying to convince me to play more on FanDuel, and every time I go over there to play, there are just like 3 contests available. Like FanDuel doesn't seem to care about DFS anymore, and it's every time I go over there, I'm like the pricing's good, and I like these contests. But there's like 6 of them available. It's like the early days of Yahoo DFS. They're like, oh, how many contests are there here? Sleeper, by the way, have you seen that Sleeper's trying to get into like the
Oh,
the
the
daily
DFS
draft
game?
stuff?
No, I have not.
Yeah, they sent me I got a little push notification. They're getting into it. Everybody's into it.
Have you been
Everybody's
drafting
here.
underdog playoff teams? I know we're just
I
extending the.
haven't. I've been drafting DraftKings one. I haven't drafted underdog ones yet, but I'm
Okay.
going to start doing that, and I'm going to play some FFPC as well. We actually have a good article from Curtis Hirsch about strategy for FFPC and his thoughts on all the playoff teams over
Love
at
that tournament.
sharpfootballanalysis.com. I'd recommend going and reading it. The strategy part of it especially is interesting. Kind of his thoughts on each team are really good. So Curtis Hirsch, Sharp Football Analysis. Make sure you go and read that. Head over there. You can learn about our postseason package. Use promo code Wildcard to get 75% off the first week of our postseason package. If you do the weekly one, go and check that out. You can also use Take 50 for $150 off the whole postseason package if you want to do that. As always, you can find us on YouTube. If you want to listen to us live, head over to youtube.com, search Warren Sharp, and you can find that. And that's about it for us. We'll be back next week to talk about super divisional round. Are we calling it super divisional round? We'll be back next week to talk about the super divisional round. We'll talk to you then.